Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, His Excellency Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and Armand Arton, founder and president of Arton Capital.
Thank you.
Aye.
Please.
That's good.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, welcome to our panel on mobility and the power of a passport. My name is Armand Arton. I'm the founder of Arton Capital and the Passport Index, which is the leading interactive real-time platform providing information on passports, ranking, and visa-free access of these passports. Today I have esteemed guests with me, which I'm very pleased to receive again, Prime Minister Brown of Antigua and Barbuda, and Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris of St. Kitts and Nevis. Unfortunately, the President of Kosovo, Mr. President Tadic, couldn't make it. We will be focusing today and discussing the economic power that actually this travel document has become in terms of negotiation on a geopolitical level, the correlation that exists between increased mobility and power of a passport and economic development for these countries. And as well, what happens when a drastic change in the mobility happens, like in your countries, when you have signed a visa-free agreement with the European Union, how this has transformed the lives of your citizens and has attracted more investors. For many of you in the room, I imagine that a power of a passport is something as a strange, abstract notion. I'm sure that not many of you have applied for a visa to be in this room, but 5 billion people in this planet have passports that does not allow them to travel to more than 80 countries. If you have an American passport in your pocket today, you can travel tonight to 167 countries just by booking a ticket. The hassle of applying for visas limits mobility and limits, I think, growth of humanity. We're in a world where more and more visa restrictions are implied on some countries, but as well we see a trend of openness of this world, and more countries are signing visa-free agreements, like Antigua and St. Kitts. So without further delay, I would like to ask Prime Minister Brown to tell us, since 2009, when Antigua really crossed the bar of the 100 countries that you could reach without visa with your passport, in signing the visa-free agreement with the Schengen member states, what have you seen as economic development in those 10 years, and how much is contributed to the increased power of your passport?
Thank you very much, Arton. Mobility is a socio-economic equalizer. What we've seen over the years is that as we increased the amount of visa-free countries, it acted as an equalizer in that Antiguans and Barbudans have been able to travel to a number of countries to enrich their cultural experiences, while at the same time getting engaged in trade and investments. In addition, it has facilitated an increase in incoming investments, in that individuals have been able to travel to our country freely, hassle-free, and even in terms of tourism trade, it has also enhanced tourism. Now, we all know that on an annual basis, approximately 1.5 billion people travel globally. But when you have these artificial restrictions, these visa requirements, obviously, those serve as impediments to investment and trade, and even impediment to people-to-people exchanges. You know, it is natural for human beings to travel. Human beings are made to be mobile. Human beings have been traveling from time immemorial, from continent to continent, from country to country. And what the power of the passport would have done is that it would have facilitated visa-free travel to a number of countries. In fact, we have now moved from about 100 in 2009 to approximately 150 countries, which is visa-free travel. So, in essence, it is an equalizer. It's a socioeconomic equalizer, while at the same time creating immense socioeconomic opportunities for people. And clearly, it is represented in the power of the passport in the sense that it empowers people to travel on a hassle-free basis.
I remember 2 years ago we were in New York together when the world watched with horror Hurricane Maria destroy Barbuda, where 100% of the population of that island has to be relocated. At that time, you asked the international community that the countries responsible for climate change should pay up the bill for cleaning and rebuilding. You and I both know that didn't really happen. But how did you manage in these last 2 years with the foreign investors and these new citizens of your country to rebuild Barbuda and gain back these lives to this population?
It has been strenuous. It has been an ardent task to recover our sister island, Barbuda, which was decimated by Hurricane Irma. In fact, there was an international pledging conference that was held at the United Nations 2 years ago, and many countries pledged an enormous amount of resources. But the reality is the pledges, in essence, only realize about 10% of the overall recovery costs. And of those pledges, the actual funds paid over to date represent approximately 5% of the recovery costs, which means that we have had to rely almost exclusively on domestic resources in order to rebuild. Now, we have made the point that climate change is perhaps the most significant threat facing the planet, and the consequences for small states, such as Antigua and Barbuda, and even St. Kitts and Nevis and other small states within the Caribbean, are significant. We do not benefit from the burning of fossil fuel energy. In fact, those profits go primarily to the industrialized countries, while in the Caribbean, we have to suffer the consequences of climate change. And we have made the case that there is an obligation for industrialized countries to contribute to the cost to mitigate against the effects of climate change and to help us to adapt to increase our resilience. Now, the issue of building resilience, obviously that comes at a cost. And countries in the Caribbean, they are small, they're vulnerable, they're primarily poor countries. They do not have a lot of capital formation in order to invest in resilient infrastructure as well as resilient homes. So those who create the problems of global warming as well as sea level rise and the whole issue of making our countries more vulnerable to increased frequency of storms and more ferocious storms, they have an obligation to assist us to build resilience so that the impact of these hurricanes could be reduced. And we'd have seen what happened recently in the Bahamas, in which Abaco and Grand Bahama, they were actually literally extinguished, almost, well, practically totally destroyed. So again, we have the view that there has to be greater global collaboration on the issue of climate change, and that there has to be a commitment of those who are emitting these dangerous fossil fuels into the atmosphere, contributing to global warming, to assist in building resilience in order to protect our civilization.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Prime Minister Harris, as you know, St. Kitts is recognized for being the pioneer, one of the leaders who put in place the citizenship by investment industry in the late 80s. It used exactly the power of a passport to really transform the economy from sugar industry to very developed tourist destinations right now with 5-star brand hotels. How involved you are and how much you think that this has helped and supported? What percentage of this growth of your GDP is count towards the citizenship by investment and towards having one of the best passports in the Caribbean right now?
Thank you. Way back in 1984, when the leaders of our country gave consideration of how we will sustain our independence, the idea came that there could be an alternative pathway for development via the economic citizenship program. And the idea was to utilize the talents of people everywhere around the world, to invite them and encourage them to come to invest in St. Kitts and Nevis and help us as a small island state to realize the goal and the aspirations of our people for a better quality of life. when in 2005 we closed the over 360-year-old sugar industry, which was the largest employer of persons in the country and by far the most significant contributor to foreign exchange, we began to focus more on implementing the ideas that the founding fathers of this program had. And in that regard, from about 2011, a lot of organized efforts were put into promoting our Citizenship by Investment program. We say that we have the oldest program, having started this and created a legal framework in 1984, and we believe and promote it as the best program. What we have seen since 2011 is a remarkable contribution to government revenues coming largely as a result of the economic citizenship program, so that contributes in significant ways to state revenues and to the bulk of the economic activity in the country. You have rightly spoken to a number of the investment largely in tourism. We have, for example, a Four Seasons brand operating in St. Kitts. We have the Marriott Residences. We have the Park Hyatt. These are all well-known high-end products that had become associated with our program because for them, this was a reliable program. And so we have seen significant expansion in our tourism product, which has grown tremendously over the last 4 or 5 years. We now receive over 1 million tourists per year, and that is significant. We have a number of other branded projects to come on board earlier next year, the Ramada Hotel, the Windham, and several other branded properties. All of these we have been able to attract to our country because of our CBI program.
And similar to Antigua, a couple of years ago, you created a special designated fund for hurricane relief, which was contributed by the foreign investors looking to benefit from this extra travel mobility that your passport provided to them. How successful was this experience?
I would say that that experience was a very successful one for us. And imagine a small country, indeed St. Kitts and Nevis is the smallest country in the Western Hemisphere, smallest and most beautiful. But we do not have the luxury of size and space. So when there is a hurricane, the entire federation is impacted in very negative ways. When we faced that particular challenge in 2017, and given what has been the experience, the inability of countries to follow through on commitments when there are significant dislocation as a consequence of climate change, we look to our own, if you will, ingenuity and our own skills to say, we have a program that we believe we can market to people who are interested in investing for a cause, interested in investing and earning on it, and we came up with our Sustainable Growth Fund, which was preceded by the Hurricane Relief Fund. That brought tremendous resources that assisted us to deal with a number of the damage to our coastal lines and in particular to the housing stock. And to date, we have been able to repair, renovate over 3,000 homes in St. Kitts and Nevis, thanks to that new program which we introduced in response to the hurricane damage.
Thank you. Even though President Tadic is not here, I would like to just mention the case of Kosovo, which is very interesting in the example of how increase of a power of the passport of Kosovo will change the life of their citizens and of their economy. Right now, Kosovo is, as you know, recognized only by half of the countries in the UN. It gained its independence from Serbia in 2008. Out of the 100 countries who recognize Kosovo, only 50 are providing visa-free. So Kosovo is pretty much on the bottom of the list of the ranking of the passport. There is only 14 worse passport than Kosovo, and the one after is North Korea. However, the country has done a lot of efforts in the last year, and they were about to finalize their visa-free arrangement with Schengen. So by the 2020, the passport will gain another 28 member states, and it will be as good as a Chinese passport. So this shows how a transformation of a single agreement with 28 member countries will really change the power of the passport. It will attract as well much more investments to the country. It will build trust into the economy, into the government. And they even have a challenge by increasing the popularity and the freedom of their passport would be how to retain their citizens not going to Europe and staying in Europe now that they can do it. Something that you don't have really as a challenge. But please tell us not only how to attract, but how do you retain, how do you make your citizens as well more fulfilled and happy by extending their personal mobility?
Well, to start with, I think that everyone desires to move. And the more we create ease of movement and facilitation to travel, everyone benefits from that. For St. Kitts and Nevis, our people are a proud people. Our people aspire to the highest standard of living, and ease of mobility helps them to do that. We, for example, travel extensively to the United States of America, to Canada, to EU, make our contribution, whether as tourists or as workers or even investors. And so the visa-free arrangement certainly provides that opportunity. For those who are coming to become our new citizens, a lot of them want the security of investing in a stable country, which is what St. Kitts and Nevis represents, a country where democracy is high, where the rule of law is well strengthened. In the World Justice Rule of Law Index, St. Kitts and Nevis was the best performer in the small island states of the OECS, and we were the second in the Caribbean. We are in the top 30 in the world. So we are rich in democracy, rich in the rule of law, and we have ample opportunities for people to be themselves. And I think that attracts people. The property rights are well entrenched, well respected in our country. So all the good things that people look for, dynamism in the country, they see that happening where year after year our country grows. And I think that by and large, St. Kitts is now seen as a responsible member of the international community, a place where everyone should visit. So I want to extend an open invitation to all of you. Please do come. Please do come.
Prime Minister Brown, the final words. What efforts are you taking for the next couple of years? Which countries, in which parts of the world you want to extend your reach to your citizens?
Recently, we have extended our reach to Russia. We now have visa-free access into Russia and Indonesia, other large countries. In fact, we have a number of countries that we are presently negotiating with, the UAE and other countries. So the whole idea is to expand the visa-free access for the benefit of our own citizens, while at the same time creating an enabling platform so that we could attract more investments and to ensure that there's continued socioeconomic development within the country. In fact, Antigua and Barbuda today boasts the most vibrant economy within the OECS sub-region and the wider CARICOM region. Last year, we did about 7.4% in growth, and it has been fueled to some extent by the attraction of foreign capital investments through our CIP program, which is obviously fueled by a strong passport. In fact, the CIP program is easily one of the best regulated programs in the world, and it has been a success for us as well. Similar to St. Kitts, we enjoy a similar success in terms of attracting investments, and that would have helped to fuel robust economic growth and development. And let me also take the opportunity to invite everyone to Antigua and Barbuda. I cannot allow my dear friend from St. Kitts to outdo Antigua and Barbuda. So Antigua is known as the cool destination of the Caribbean. Easily the best destination for investment, and we boast 365 beautiful beaches, easily the best beaches in the world, and as we say in Antigua, paradise awaits you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. In a conclusion, I want to say that I hope we have convinced you that that merely travel document is much more powerful tool in your hands and in the hands of responsible governments. And we're monitoring at the Passport Index something called the World Openness Score, which is the agreements between the 196 countries between themselves. And we see a good trend. More and more countries are signing. Out of 39,000 as a maximum, we are now at nearly 21,000. If the trend continues, by 2035, every citizen of the world will be able to travel to every country in the world. I know it's a utopia, but I wish it becomes a reality. Even if I'm out of business, my citizens and my kids will be true global citizens. Thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Pleasure.